Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse. As Oriole fans are aware, injuries were a really big and impactful part of the 2025 campaign for the Baltimore Orioles. Not to say that the Orioles were a playoff team if they were at full health or anything like that, but the Orioles were doomed in many ways by injuries that had affected various key and important players on the team. And heading into the 2026 season, the Orioles are going to be entering the season banged up, maybe not to the same degree, but there are some warning signs that have come out. What we've been learning from what is right now the very, very beginning of camp. Spring training games have started at this point. And yeah, so there's just kind of a lot going on that the Orioles are probably trying to troubleshoot now, and the Orioles are not going to be entering opening day at 100%. Now, I know that last year there were some key injuries. Gunnar Henderson started on the injured list last year. Um, Kyle Bradish, of course, and there were, I think, a couple others. Colton Cowser, I know, got injured very, very early on. And this year, the injuries so far have really impacted the infield. And as of right now, the Orioles are going to be heading into opening day. The infield, we would normally think of as a strength of this team, especially a fully healthy infield. You know, we look at Pete Alonso, Holiday, Henderson, and then Jordan Westberg. Um, Now I know maybe, Jordan Westberg, he's had various injuries. There's concerns just about him. So how certain Oriole fans felt. But if you have those four players, the infield is definitely a strength of this team. And two of those four players have sort of appeared to go down with injury and will be out to start the season. So the first one is Jackson Holiday, and I will actually kind of do what I did last time, share my screen here, and just and show a little bit about what's happening. So yeah, as you see here, Jackson Holiday is going to begin the season on the injured list due to a hamate surgery. He fractured his hamate bone, and he's going to be out for a few weeks to start the season. So the second base position, he was, even though Jackson Holiday is probably around a league average player, maybe a little above league average defensively, and maybe a little below offensively. In general, the Orioles definitely had him basically set to start the season, not only start the season, but be the everyday second baseman for the most part throughout the entire year. So he's going to be out the first few weeks of the season, which is going to leave a lot of questions for the Orioles to try to figure out. And then to even compound that and to contribute to the questions that the Orioles are going to have to deal with or try to figure out and address. Um, Jordan Westberg was diagnosed with a partial UCL tear. So as of now, he's not undergoing surgery. And as it says here, there are injections that he's going to be able to take in order to hopefully sort of the injections are more or less a temporary sort of solution. It's not necessarily structurally fixing the problem in the way that surgery would. But with this tear, it's possible that the injections are going to be sufficient and are going to be able to keep him healthy enough in the long term to either avoid surgery. So kind of what it seems like though is that there is possibility that at some point he will undergo surgery, which, is going to put him out for a much more extended period of time. As of now, he's going to miss opening day. And he's going to miss at least a month of the season, but hopefully they have him back soon after that, depending on the effectiveness of the injections. Um, However, there is a possibility at some point in his career that he's going to have to undergo surgery, in which case that is going to be an extended period of time where he would be out, where, like the this thing says here, MLB trade rumors, if he were to undergo surgery, he would be out for basically the entire season. So those are sort of uh, the two kind of situations. Jackson Holiday, there's a bit more confidence that he's going to sort of return in the time frame, and within a few weeks of opening day. But uh, yeah, there's probably a lot more uncertainty about basically what the future holds for Jordan Westberg and what that means for him and for the Orioles heading into the 2026 season. Um, so yeah, and I mean, just to kind of, the article does, or the statement here. I don't know if this is fair to be considered an article, but the MLB trade rumors thing, as it indicates here, it is going to be somewhat significant amount of time lost. Yeah, here it says even if Westbrook only misses a couple months rather than the entire year, it's still a critical loss for Baltimore, and it absolutely is, because uh, sort of the top of the infield, sort of the four infielders that we had kind of mentioned, or I had mentioned at the beginning, they are very, very strong. They're all very great. But then, of course, as is the situation with most teams, and when we start looking at backups and utility infielders and this sort of thing, the caliber drops off quite a bit. And, there would be a situation potentially where the Orioles would be able to, um, yeah, there would be a situation where, the Orioles would be able, if there was one of these guys injured rather than both of them, perhaps the Orioles would be in a bit better position to sort of manage, to sort of rotate things around the infield. But given that there are now two people that are going to be out to start opening day due to injuries, it is really going to strain a little bit the depth that the Orioles have. Ideally, if you have one guy out, let's say, Jordan Westberg was, or let's say Jackson Holiday was out just to start, there are things you could do. You could put Westberg at second, and then you could, have somebody at third. You could match up lefty righty. And with both of them being out now, you could, and when I say match up lefty righty, I was sort of referring to getting the right bats in the lineup to match up against the starting pitcher. But yeah, sort of, with both of them being out, the Orioles and Albernaz are going to be a lot less able to sort of be able to kind of troubleshoot those things. And it's going to be kind of not necessarily putting guys in situations because this is good or because there is a strategic matchup advantage, etc. But because we need somebody to play this position. This is the guy that is competent at this position, etc. And, I'm not sure how much that's going to be possible. And this is going to be more based upon need that the Orioles are filling in both of these guys. Um, yeah, so at second base, the production that is going to come out, of course, is not going to be as good as it will be with Holiday. but the production, whatever we get out of the third base position, is probably going to be significantly less or significantly less than the baseline of either Holiday or Westberg. Um, so yeah, that's one thing to think about. I think if anybody has been sort of following the trajectory of Jordan Westberg's career, I think that this is not unexpected, and I think that there are some I think there should have been some contingency plans that, and I'm sure there are and were, that were in place in case this were to happen. Westberg, of course, was out for a lot of the season last year, and the Orioles were able to sort of fill the hole with different options, as is kind of mentioned at the bottom of this here. But the Orioles as of now, don't have Ramon Urias, don't have Emmanuel Rivera. These guys are not guys that, we would have turned to in the past. Rivera, of course, was in, AAA for a lot of the year. But he did come to the majors. We did have these other guys to turn to. At the very end of the year, we had Jeremiah Jackson, and I'll talk about him and how he fits in here. But then, yeah, the Orioles did just fortunately acquire Blaze Alexander not too long ago. And I'll talk a little bit here about Kobe Mayo because obviously I think that he is sort of the obvious replacement for Jordan Westberg at third base. I think there are some complications with him being the third baseman. It seemed like the Orioles were pretty quick last year to sort of adjust his position, move him to first base. Of course, first base is not an option now for him, really, given that Pete Alonso is going to be there, and then maybe a little bit of Basayo and Adley. So first base is not going to be really an option for him. So, there are sort of talks about Kobe Mayo or Mountcastle potentially being traded, which that would alleviate the problem with trying to find Kobe Mayo space on this infield, which we've talked about, I think, multiple of the hosts on this show have talked about in the past, or co-hosts have talked about in the past. But is there sort of now a role for Kobe Mayo? And initially, maybe at the beginning of all of this, or before we had sort of seen Kobe Mayo at third base, maybe there would be a silver lining to the news about Jordan Westberg, because this would give Kobe Mayo actual playing time for an extended period of time to just cover third base, to get him in the lineup on an everyday basis. Um, but the Orioles definitely seemed uncomfortable with having him at third base, even though it seems like he's going to be working out there this spring. The Orioles did seem rather uncomfortable with having him over at third base. It seemed like sort of made a decision at the time that first base is a better fit, a better option for him, where the footwork maybe doesn't have to be as significant as it does when you're playing third base. And then, of course, the throws, of course. Now, Mayo has a good arm, but, there are questions just about his ability to kind of handle the hot corner defensively. And I think that a lot of the defensive concerns about him would have been alleviated if he had moved to first base, which of course brings up another, sort of set of concerns about, him hitting enough, etc. But it seemed like the Orioles felt more comfortable, trusting kind of his bat to come through eventually. Um, and we're a little more concerned about his ability defensively at third. So, sort of potentially, there could be a silver lining to the Jordan Westberg situation where Kobe Mayo takes over third base, does a great job, maybe around the time, he uh, Westberg is ready to return. The Orioles have sort of found a solution for Kobe Mayo to get him in the lineup or to trade him. But the third base option was going to give him some availability to play over there. So um, it really is just a question: how comfortable are the Orioles putting him at third on an everyday basis? And the Orioles are not in the situation they used to be in years past where they could take a prospect, let them struggle, let them, not play great over at a certain position, and we're just going to trust and, we're not going to the playoffs anyway. This is a team that, based on all the offseason moves that have been made by Elias, is looking to be a contender this upcoming year, and probably that's Rubenstein's perspective as well, and the entire organization. So we cannot really afford to have Mayo really really struggling defensively over at third base when the Orioles are really trying to win games. Especially if his bat is not, an all-star level bat. How much are we and the Orioles going to be able to compromise defensively? How much will they tolerate defensively, especially if he is around a league average hitter ish or somewhere in that range? So that'll be really interesting to sort of see how the Orioles handle that. I would imagine, just given the situation, given the other options, at least as of now, there is, of course, possibility for the Orioles to sign somebody. But given the options now, I would imagine Kobe Mayo has to get some time over at third base, at least a little bit. But that sort of turns us to the other two options for how the Orioles are going to, fill this gap. Blaze Alexander, as I kind of mentioned, he can play third, but most likely he's going to be playing second base, which is, expected, intuitive. It's where he sort of has the most experience, right? Um, so Blaze Alexander is a possibility, but I think it's more likely he'll get more time at second base. And then Jeremiah Jackson, sort of the question. He's played second and third. Of course, the Orioles tried him a little bit in the outfield as well, but he was initially an infielder. So Jeremiah Jackson, I think, is going to be a pretty consistent replacement, as we start entering the season. So I think, on most days it's going to be some combination of the three of them, of Alexander, of Mayo, of Jeremiah Jackson. Kobe Mayo probably has the most upside in the group. The Orioles are probably, would theoretically want to give him the most playing time. But the performance has to sort of match, the performance has to sort of be there in order for, that to actually be the case and for the Orioles to feel comfortable. If Jeremiah Jackson is hitting really, really well, as he, has shown that he's capable of doing in the past, um, I think there is a possibility the Orioles give him a good amount of time. And then, of course, the Orioles did, go out and trade for Blaze Alexander. I think he's out of the three of them, he's probably the most known quantity. He's older in his career. Well, I think actually Jeremiah Jackson might be around the same age. Let me actually look. So Jeremiah Jackson, of course, is it saying his birthday here? Okay. Well, yeah. So Jeremiah Jackson last year. Okay. No, so they're probably not around the same age. Jeremiah Jackson last year, it was his age 25 season. And Blaze Alexander last year, okay, it was his age 26 season. So they're around the same age. But yeah, Blaze Alexander has a little bit more major league experience. So I think that the Orioles probably know a little bit more and feel a little bit more confident. Not necessarily in his ability, but a little more assured in what they're going to get from Blaze Alexander. Even though he is still, yeah, actually, take it back what I said a little bit. He is still very young in his career. He only has, he has less than 400 major league at bats. So yeah, that's something too. But Jeremiah Jackson is sort of he has even less than that. Yeah, he has less than 200 major league at bats. So, but I do think that, I think Jeremiah Jackson is probably viewed as somebody who has a bit more upside, especially offensively. Defensively is kind of the question for him. Like, where is the best and most suitable position? But I think there's more offensive upside with Jeremiah Jackson, for instance, um, than maybe Blaze Alexander. So, how much are the Orioles going to, be trying to use these injuries to kind of explore what they have available to them, and how much are they going to, sort of play people and prioritize guys that are consistent and guys that they sort of expect to, yeah, guys that are consistent and that are maybe a little bit less variable, but also have less upside. So, yeah, I think, probably I would expect the Orioles are going to have to make some sort of move. There's going to be somebody added to that mix of the three guys that were just kind of listed there. Jackson Mayo and Blaze Alexander. So somebody else is going to have to be added to that mix as well. But it's just there's a bit of a question about, out of those three, who's going to get the bulk of the playing time? I would imagine Mayo's going to get a good amount of it. But yeah, just trying to prioritize and trying to emphasize and figure out, what the sort of defensive arrangements are going to be, and how the Orioles are going to kind of enter into the season, trying to sort of figure out and kind of address these holes that are now present for this Orioles infield. Yeah, and both of these injuries really do have significant consequences. Assuming the Orioles make the playoffs, which, you know, I don't mean it like that. I more mean if the Orioles make the playoffs, if everybody is full strength and everything like that headed into the playoffs, then, these injuries at the beginning of the season, could potentially just be a footnote, when looking back. But I think that it's and we'll get into predictions as we get closer to opening day for win totals and stuff like that. But I think that if last year has shown us anything, I think that an Oriole playoff berth is not at all guaranteed, and the fact that the Orioles are entering this season with these two significant injuries on the infield. These injuries, I mean, this is a very, very rough sort of, metric. But if we were entering the season with an A infield, this is probably, these injuries, both of them, I mean, it's half our infield. We're probably looking at like now a C-ish infield, right? Um, so, and maybe there is some variability with that based on how these guys play. But it is very concerning, and it is a good chunk of the season that both of these guys are going to be out. So it leads a lot of questions. I'm sure by the time from now to when we hit opening day, the Orioles are going to have more injuries that come up. And, it would be really, really unfortunate if sort of injuries again were sort of the thing that plagued this Orioles season and really doomed us in the long term. Fortunately, right now, our pitching staff is relatively healthy. None of our major starters are entering the season with injuries. But this infield is going to look a lot different now to start the season. And frankly, just a lot worse, which is really, really unfortunate. Hopefully, the Orioles will be able to get healthy, but there are some concerning warning signs for the outlook of the season as we enter the 2026 campaign. So, hopefully everything turns around, guys will get healthy, etc. But there are some concerns, and hopefully, they won't be too negatively impactful for the outlook of this Orioles season. So anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We can all be excited because, as I noted before, spring training is here. So baseball is coming back. Winter is sort of ending and closing out. So spring is almost here. Baseball is back. And we could be really excited about that. It would also just be really, really great if we could be excited about the Orioles as well. So, all right. Thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Please follow the show, give us a 5-star rating and review. We have a YouTube channel. You can see us on there. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Please comment on the YouTube video with any thoughts that you might have, thoughts on the analysis. Who are the Orioles going to be playing most of the time at second and third base? If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Feel free to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at The Warehouse Pod. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been The Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse, and go O's.